sit at zero on crypto and you could get fired. That's not some random influencer talking. That's the guy who runs the money at one of the biggest crypto firms on earth. His name is Matt Hougan. And a few days ago, he said something that should stop every XRP holder cold. He said the big institutions, the ones moving trillions, are now basically forced into this space. Not because they suddenly love crypto, because if they sit at zero and they're wrong, they get fired. That's his word. Fired. Now the internet grabbed that and ran with it. Banks are forced to buy XRP or shut down. And look, I'm going to be straight with you. That is not exactly what he said. But here's the twist nobody's talking about. The real version might actually be bigger for XRP. Because while everyone's screaming about the headline, something is quietly being built on the XRP Ledger right now. And it's happening at the exact moment XRP is sitting near its lowest price in a year. So here's the question I want you to sit with. Is the smart money early, or is it just wrong? Give me the next few minutes, and I'll show you what Hougan actually said, what he didn't, and what's really going on under the surface. Quick thing before we dive in. Nothing here is financial advice. Any price idea or scenario I bring up is just an opinion, not a promise. So protect your family, do your own research, and don't let anyone rush you into a decision, including me. All right, let's get into it. So, let's start with what the man actually said, because this part matters more than the headline. Matt Hougan is the Chief Investment Officer at Bitwise. That means he doesn't post memes for a living. He decides how real money gets allocated. And his argument goes like this. For a big institution, the default job is to own a little bit of everything. Stocks, bonds, commodities, all of it. That's the base case. Now, when you own everything, and crypto has become part of everything, then choosing to hold zero crypto isn't playing it safe. It's actually an active bet against an entire asset class. And here's the line that lit everyone up. If you make that bet and you're wrong, you get fired. Because you'll be the one person who sat at zero, while the David Solomons and the Larry Finks and the Vlad Tenevs of the world quietly added exposure and rode the growth. Miss that, and you're the one explaining to your board why you fell behind. Now here's where I have to be honest with you, because that's the whole point of this channel. Hougan was talking about crypto as a category. Bitcoin first, then the broader space. He was not standing on a stage saying every bank on earth has to run out and buy XRP tomorrow or close their doors. That headline, banks forced to buy XRP or shut down, somebody stretched it. A lot. But before you click away thinking, oh great, so it's nothing, hold on. Because the honest version is actually the interesting one. Think about the math for a second. Hougan describes a world where the default institutional allocation to crypto moves from 0 to just a couple of percent. Sounds tiny, right? Except a couple of percent of a $30 trillion pool of institutional money is not tiny, not even close. And when that money moves, it doesn't move into one coin. It moves into a basket. ETFs, index products, diversified exposure. And XRP is now sitting inside those products on regulated exchanges in the United States. So, the real story isn't a fake quote about banks being forced to buy XRP. The real story is that XRP finally made it into the room where those allocation decisions actually get made. That's the shift. That's what changed. And that brings us straight to that $30 trillion number, because everybody keeps repeating it. Almost nobody stops to ask where it even comes from or whether it's real. So let me show you exactly who's saying it, and why it's bigger than one guy at Bitwise having a hot take. So where does this 30 trillion number actually come from? Because if it's just one analyst getting excited, that's one thing. But it isn't. Listen to Sandy Kaul. She runs digital asset strategy at Franklin Templeton. And Franklin Templeton is not a startup. They manage a serious book of traditional money. Here's roughly what she's been saying. In the last bull market, the entire crypto space topped out somewhere around $4 trillion. $4 trillion at the very peak. And her view is that the next wave doesn't just match that. It could be multiples of it, 20 trillion, 30, maybe even higher over time. Now, I want to be careful here, because this is important. That is a projection. It's her professional opinion about where things could go. It is not a guarantee, and nobody should treat it like one. Predictions are predictions. But when the person making the prediction sits inside a firm that moves that kind of money, you at least want to understand the logic. And the logic is basically what Hougan said, just pointed at a bigger target. See, he made a point that flew right past most people. He said the crypto market today is worth maybe $2 trillion. But decentralized finance, the actual technology, the ability to move value, lend it, settle it, tokenize it, that isn't a $2 trillion market. That's a run at the entire global financial system. And that system is measured in the hundreds of trillions. So here's the real question. If value is going to start moving on blockchain rails, and the biggest names in finance now believe that, then what do they actually use to move it? Because you don't settle trillions of dollars on hype. You need infrastructure. You need assets built for speed, for cost, for settlement. And that is exactly the lane XRP was designed for, from day one. Now, does that mean XPR automatically captures all of it? No, absolutely not. Anyone promising you that is selling you something. There are other networks, other assets, real competition. This is not a done deal. But notice what just happened. We went from a spicy quote about people getting fired all the way to two of the most established names in traditional finance, describing a shift measured in tens of trillions of dollars. That's the setup. So the natural question is, okay, cool story, but is any of this actually happening yet? Or is it all just talk on a podcast? Because talk is cheap. So let me show you what's already live, on-chain, right now. And this next part is the part I think most people are completely missing. All right, let's get out of the podcast studio and onto the actual ledger, because this is where it stops being a theory. Start with stablecoins. Ripple has its own regulated stablecoin, RLUSD. And here's a number that genuinely made me look twice. For the first time, there is now more RLUSD living on the XRP Ledger than on Ethereum. More. On-chain, verified. A few months ago, Ethereum was ahead by hundreds of millions. Now, the ledger flipped it. That's not a press release. That's real liquidity, moving to where it's being used. Then there's lending. And this one is clever. Through Flare and its version of XRP called FXRP, holders can now put their XRP up as collateral and borrow RLUSD against it, in a vault already sized in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And the wild part? You basically never leave your wallet. You lock your XRP, you borrow the stablecoin, and it all just settles. Hugo Fillion, who runs Flare, described it as about as close as you can get to native borrowing against XRP. So your XRP stops just sitting there. It starts doing something. Now let me show you the one that ties it all together. Evernorth. This is a company backed by Ripple that's on its way to going public on the Nasdaq under the ticker XRPN. And their whole model is being the largest XRP treasury out there. But here's what makes them different. Their CEO, Ashish Birla, is very clear that they're not just buying XRP and sitting on it. They run validators, they lend, they put the treasury to work. And I'm going to be honest with you, because I always will be. Evernorth is currently underwater on a lot of that XRP. They bought a big chunk way higher than today's price. That's real, and I'm not hiding it. But think about what it tells you. A serious, Ripple-backed company is choosing to build a regulated, public, on-chain XRP business at these prices. Not at the top. Down here. Quick pause. I want to hear from you on this one. Did you know most of this was already live before today? Type yes or no in the comments. I read them, and I'm genuinely curious how many of you had this on your radar. And it doesn't stop there. The ETFs are still pulling in money, around $1.5 billion in total, even in a rough market. And here's the kicker. Goldman Sachs, the actual Goldman Sachs, disclosed a position worth over $150 million in XRP ETFs. So the foundation isn't coming. It's being poured, right now. But there's one thing standing in the way, the piece the whole market is waiting on. And a lot of people are getting this one wrong too. So let's talk about it honestly. So here's the piece everyone's holding their breath for. Regulation. Specifically in the US, a bill people keep calling the Clarity Act. The idea is simple. Give crypto real clear rules of the road. Who regulates what? What counts as what? And a lot of people believe that once that clarity lands, it flips a switch for assets like XRP. Now, here's where I have to give you the real update, not the hype version. As of right now, that bill has not passed. It got pushed. The Senate ran out of runway before their break, and the vote got moved to September. And even then, honestly, it is not a sure thing. There's real disagreement, the calendar is tight, and plenty of analysts think its odds this year just got worse, not better. So if some video promised you it's a done deal, that video is already out of date. And you saw the market react. The moment that delay hit, XRP dipped. That's the short-term reality, and I'm not going to bury it. Even Anthony Scaramucci weighed in on this. His take was basically, if clarity passes, you'd likely see a rally in names like Ripple and Solana. But notice, that's his opinion, and it's an if, not a when. And for context, he's talked openly about being in Ethereum and Solana himself. So like everyone, he's partly talking his own book. Keep that in mind anytime someone hands you a price take. But here's the part I really want you to catch. And this might be the most important thing in the whole video. Everything I showed you in the last section, the stablecoin supply flipping onto the ledger, the lending vaults, Evernorth going public, the ETFs, Goldman's position, none of that waited for the Clarity Act. It's all happening without it. So yes, clarity would be a tailwind, a big one, but the building is already going on underneath, whether Washington moves in September or not. So think about it like this. Picture the foundation of a house getting poured while the city is still arguing about the permit. That's kind of where we are, and I'll be straight with you. That's a very different situation than a project that's frozen, waiting on a signature. So let me pull all of this together. Because the real question was never just what Matt Hougan said in one clip. The real question is what all of this actually means for you. If you're holding XRP right now, down here, in the quiet. Let's talk about that. So let's bring it home. What does all of this actually mean if you're an XRP holder watching your bag sit near its lowest point in a year? First, the honest part. The price right now is not reflecting any of this. XRP is down big over the past year. That's just the truth. And if anybody tells you the chart looks amazing right now, they're not being real with you. Short-term sentiment is rough, but here's the reframe. And I mean this. Everything we covered today is happening during the rough part, not during a party. The institutions Hougan described are building their default allocation while it's quiet. The stablecoin liquidity moved onto the ledger while it's quiet. Evernorth is going public while it's quiet. Goldman took a position while it's quiet. That is usually how these things go. The foundation gets poured before anyone's watching, not after. Now, does any of that guarantee the price goes up? No. Let me say it clearly, one more time. There are no guarantees here. Regulation could stall. The market could stay ugly longer than any of us want. Real risks, real competition, and nobody, including me, knows the timing. Anyone who acts certain is just guessing with confidence. So, what do you actually do with this? Honestly, nothing dramatic. You don't panic. You don't go all in because a stranger on YouTube got you excited. And you definitely don't risk money your family needs. Please, protect your household first. Do your own research. Take your time. If this thesis is real, it does not need you to rush in today. And if it's not real, rushing in is the last thing you'd ever want to do. What today should really give you is context. So the next time you see a wild headline, banks forced to buy XRP or shut down, you'll know the real version sitting underneath it. And the real version, quietly, might just be the one that matters. Because here's what I keep coming back to. The smart money isn't buying the top. It's positioning in the silence. And right now, it is very, very quiet. This has been Crypto with BHW. We're early. The foundation is being poured. And I'll see you in the very next one.